Ahem. Let's talk about the new flagship YouTube Red series Cobra Kai, a continuation of the Karate Kid films set in present day. It brings back Ralph Macchio as Daniel Larusso and William Zabka as Johnny Lawrence. Zabka is really the principal character here, and that's a ballsy move. YouTube could have chosen to recast Johnny Lawrence with a new actor with a bit more of a proven track record, and probably very few people would have pitched a fit about that. But they chose to put their hopes in Zabka, an actor who has never carried a series and who has never carried a film. He's been getting steady work as an actor in the decades since The Karate Kid, but his resume is not impressive in terms of look at all these leading man roles. So it was definitely a ballsy move for YouTube to put so much faith in him, and I'm happy to say that their faith is rewarded. At the age of 52, William Zabka absolutely kills it in this role as a surprisingly complex adult update of the character he made famous 34 years ago. Ralph Macchio similarly delivers the goods as a wealthy car dealership owner version of Daniel Larusso, who has clearly lost his way, but still has his heart in the right place. But it's really Zabka who steals the show. And this show could have been awful. It maybe even should have been awful, but the showrunners clearly had a solid grasp of what fundamentally made the Karate Kid movies work. Relationships are at the heart of this show. Johnny Lawrence's relationship with his pupil Miguel, played by Zolo Meriduana. I hope I'm pronouncing that close to correctly. It's every bit as electric as the relationship between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi in the original trilogy, though vastly different in many ways. A less interesting but still well-developed relationship exists between Daniel LaRusso and Tanner Buchanan, played by Robbie Keane. Tanner is Johnny Lawrence's son, but Johnny was a deadbeat dad who never was there for his son when he was growing up. Tanner at first ingratiates himself to Daniel simply to make his father angry, but when Daniel begins to teach him karate, the pretense of I'm doing this to make my dad mad kind of slowly falls away, and Tanner and Daniel form a real sort of bond, all while Daniel doesn't even know that this is Johnny Lawrence's son, and that's something that comes to a big head in the series. The rivalry between Daniel and Johnny is rightly given center stage here, and while a lot of it is centered in the past, the show does a really excellent job of giving these two characters new reasons to be at odds with one another. Johnny clearly resents Daniel's success and feels like Daniel kind of stole the life that was meant for him. You know, he was supposed to be the champion. He was supposed to be the winner. But here's Daniel LaRusso, the punk kid that he used to pick on, now a successful guy with car dealerships and TV commercials, and he's, you know, Johnny Lawrence, the guy who was supposed to be the big champion. Here he is wasting away in a shitty apartment building somewhere. He reasserts his power by resurrecting the Cobra Kai dojo. And I was afraid from the trailers that Cobra Kai would be like a sanitized version of its former self, but it's really not. It's the same Cobra Kai you remember from the 1984 Karate Kid film. They might have made a few updates, like allowing girls, and Johnny doesn't exactly attract the highest caliber of athletes to his studio. He actually attracts a bunch of like loser kids who were more like where Daniel was in the first movie. But the teachings of Cobra Kai are the same. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Johnny has no compunctions about insulting his pupils, injuring his pupils. He's a real prick of a sensei, but he does end up empowering the kids under his care, and not with a bunch of SJW affirmation bullshit about, you know, getting endless accommodations. He basically shows them that the world is a cruel place and that sometimes you got to be a cruel son of a bitch to get ahead in it. Daniel, on the other hand, faithfully continues the tradition of karate that was taught to him by Mr. Miyagi, you know, finding balance, using violence only as a last resort, being at peace within yourself. The great thing about this series is that it doesn't spoon feed you the answer as to whose approach to karate and to life is correct. We see the flaws and the benefits of both philosophies laid out in the introduction of a story element that the original movies never had: moral ambiguity. You know, who's the hero? Who's the villain? Well, they both are. Johnny and Daniel both are the hero. They're both the villain. They've both lost their way in life, and this series finds both of them sort of rediscovering their path, but neither path is just presented as a caricature. Neither path is made to look like purely good or purely evil, and the ambiguity really works here because we're invited to empathize with both sides of the conflict and see that on many levels the conflict need not even exist. If only these characters had the larger overview that we as the audience have, they might not even be at odds. They might find common ground. But since they can only exist within their own perspectives, they don't see the bigger picture. Only we can see it. And so it's kind of almost frustrating, but in a good way, because you just want to sometimes grab these characters and give them some of this information they don't have that might change their perspectives. You know, in 1984's Karate Kid, Cobra Kai and Johnny were evil, or at least bad people, and Miyagi and Daniel, they were the good people, and that was that. Here we dispense with that black and white point of view, and it's one of the key ingredients that makes this series rise to heights that probably few people believed it could have, including myself. I didn't think it was going to be this good. There's much more I could talk about when it comes to this series, including a lot of very well integrated subplots and support characters. But honestly, you should just watch it for yourself. I give Cobra Kai Season 1 a 10 out of 10.